Today we'll be discussing the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. What is the Palestine-Israel conflict, and how did it start? The inciting incident for the recent escalation of the ongoing Israel-Palestine conflict started with the terrorist group Hamas, an extension of the Islamic resistance movement that represented a more aggressive alternative for reclaiming the Holy Land, often utilizing suicide bombers, rockets, and torture methods to attain the destruction of Israel and the establishment of an Islamic society in historic Palestine. On October 7th, 2023, Hamas staged a premeditated attack on the Israel-Gaza border. The attack included the firing of several missiles from Gaza to Israel, while Hamas members breached the border and began attacking and abducting Israelis in local towns. In the violence, many civilians were injured, and around 1,200 lives were lost. Israel struck against Palestine at full force, killing thousands of innocent civilians and displacing still more. Palestinians in Israel were denied freedom of movement and subjected to apartheid, while dissenting Israelis were arrested or otherwise punished. As Israel military entered Gaza, Palestinian discrimination and abuse intensified with denial of free speech, targeted employment issues, and unlawful cutoff of food, water, and electricity. Deeming the situation a human rights crisis, the United Nations held a press conference on 17th of October 2023 to discuss potential action. Here are some of the representatives' statements. Olof Skog's bloc called for an immediate release of all hostages, condemned all attacks on civilians, and underscored the importance for protecting civilians. Catherine Anas Ahmad al-Halik brought to attention Israel's disregard for the minimum rights promised to all civilians in times of war, and the unnecessary and unlawful targeting of civilian homes and infrastructure in Gaza. The International Federation for Human Rights also condemned the displacement of Palestinians in the West Bank and noted the unlawful restrictions on movement and access to humanitarian aid. According to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, everyone has the right to freedom of movement and residency within the borders of each state. By blocking and destroying roads and requiring only Palestinian members of the population to go through the lengthy travel permit process, Israel is blatantly breaking this principle. In addition to Palestinian civilian abuse, Israeli and Jewish civilians are also under attack in Gaza. The terrorist group Hamas is propagating anti-Israeli and anti-Semitic ideals, leading to particularly disturbing consequences. The indoctrination of youth is breeding hatred and violence toward Jews and Israelis. Student curriculum includes demonization of Jews and the State of Israel, learning to shoot automatic weapons, and kidnapping methods. Below is a picture from a school play about shooting at and capturing Jews. Hamas attacked a music festival held near the Israel-Gaza border, killing hundreds of unarmed children. Men went door to door, murdering innocent civilians, and intentionally set fire to elderly civilians' homes. Hamas members have committed a slew of atrocities on Israeli civilians. This is in direct violation of Article 3 of the UDHR document, which states that everyone has the right to life, liberty, and security of person. During the initial Hamas attack, several female hostages were gang-raped and beaten, then publicly humiliated in a demented parade where onlookers were invited to hoot and cheer. This, in conjunction with the ongoing torture of Israeli hostages and the incitement of hate against Jews, breaks Article 5 of the EDHR document, which states that no one shall be subjected to torture or to cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment. Because of the polarizing issue in Gaza, religious groups are being unfairly blamed for the violence. Associated with Israel, Jews face increased levels of hate crimes in the United States, a trend that applies to most countries that publicize figures from police or civil service groups. This is a still taken from the riot at a Russian airport in October 2023. Rioters stormed the airport searching for Jews to hurt after a flight landed from Tel Aviv. This surge of verbal and physical aggression toward Jews can be attributed to overwhelming anger over the thousands of Palestinian deaths at Israeli government's hands. This anger is valid, but tragically misplaced. As anti-Semitism rises, so too does Islamophobia and anti-Arab sentiment. Civil services like Muslim Civil Rights and Activism Organization report staggeringly high levels of assistance requests, a majority relating to free speech issues, targeted employment, and hate crimes. Tragedy struck in mid-October 2023 when 6-year-old boy Wadea Al-Fayumi and his mother were stabbed by their landlord, whose obsession with the Gaza conflict left him fearful of his Palestinian tenants. This hate crime resulted in the death of Wadea Al-Fayumi, and his surviving mother could not attend her own son's funeral because she was still critically injured in the hospital. This boy was robbed of his right to life because of public ignorance and hatred inspired by the Israel-Palestine conflict in Gaza. The same Islamophobic rhetoric used to justify violence against Palestinians in Gaza and silence supporters of Palestinian human rights in America contribute to the rise of bigotry and violence on a global scale. Equating Palestinians to Hamas and reducing them to a terrorist stereotype is a dangerous untruth that threatens to perpetuate cycles of bleeding into death. And all of these acts of bigotry and hate break one of the most fundamental human rights. We as human beings are endowed with the same freedoms and the same rights. Reason and conscience are gifts. They give us the opportunity to choose how to act and what to believe. While the UDHR tells us to act toward others in the spirit of brotherhood, this is not being upheld. Innocent civilians are being assaulted, raped, threatened, verbally abused, and otherwise discriminated against based on religion and ethnicity. These are the consequences of choosing hate. All humans deserve to have their human rights respected, and it is up to us to educate the public and speak out against these injustices.